The ayes are 54, the noes are 64. The motion is not agreed to. Call on members. Order of the day number 6.
Gambling Harm Reduction Amendment Bill, first reading.
A call to Euro Flavel.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Kia ora tātou katoa. Mr Speaker, I move that the Gambling Harm Reduction Amendment Bill be now read a first time. It's my intention that the bill be considered by the Commerce Select Committee in time. Mr Speaker, umpteen pieces of research tell us that problem gambling can have devastating consequences on individuals and whānau. Those consequences can be demonstrated in relationship breakdowns, financial ruin, psychological distress, criminal offending, imprisonment and suicide. So you could say that it severely compromises the potential of whānau. The Māori Party takes this issue really seriously, and so when we had the opportunity to enter into a relationship agreement with the national government, we made social hazards part of our negotiations. And so we're really thrilled that the National Party agreed to support this bill through the Select Committee, and we hope that they will do so through subsequent phases. Actually, I'm looking forward to the wholesale support across the House for this bill. The inquiries and the support provided by members of the House across the parties indicate that there are matters to be addressed with pokies, and having it go to Select Committee will allow that discussion to be opened up. Sure, there might be some things that need some tweaking, but let's have the submissions and let's have the debate. Mr Speaker, I'm clear that it's not likely that we'll get rid of pokie machines altogether. People do, however, recognise that something needs to be done about pokies and addressing the harm caused by those machines. But it seems to be counterbalanced by those who run the who is going to pay for the sports club uniforms argument, or perhaps who will sponsor the kapahaka competition argument. People are concerned that they may not get the money stream, and I understand that. But we're trying to focus on the harm, and that is why we have termed the bill the Gambling Harm Reduction Amendment Bill. Mr Speaker, this bill proposes a law change that would enable local authorities, in consultation with their communities, to reduce the number of pokie machines in their district. The purpose of the bill is to provide local communities with more power to determine where pokie machines may be sited and how the proceeds can be distributed. Electronic gambling machines, the venues tend to be overly represented in lower income communities and town centres. Māori and Pacifica populations are effectively being disproportionately targeted and even severely harmed by them. This bill seeks to overcome these inequities of harm in the location and excessive numbers of pokie machines by enabling local authorities, in consultation with their communities, to reduce the number of or even eliminate pokie machines from those suburbs and towns where they are particularly concentrated or are doing particular harm. It also changes the responsibility for distributing pokie funds and to provide an informed and democratically accountable distribution method. So in doing so, we hope to end the inefficiencies, lack of transparency, risks of unethical behaviour and failure to appreciate and respond to the greatest needs of particular geographical and ethnic communities in the distribution of the community benefit funds from pokies. So money taken out of the Kawerau community, for example, and distributed in Hamilton or Christchurch is wrong, and we want to address that. Mr Speaker, the bill also proposes to give gamblers more ability to limit and control their own gambling behaviour through player tracking devices and pre-commit cards. I suppose the background to a lot of this discussion for us as the Māori Party is that tangata whenua have no history of traditional concepts of gambling. Indeed, there's no word for it in the Māori language. And so David Grant has described the introduction of gambling by the new settlers as cultural baggage, a baggage which has been disproportionately associated with Māori. And so here we are today, recognising that Māori are 2 to 3 times more at risk of problem and pathological gambling than non-Māori, and that Māori youth are 6 times as likely as non-Māori to develop gambling problems. So instead of leading to self-determination, gambling creates more and more reliance on gaming machines being the road out of the poverty trap that many find themselves in. But that unfortunately, is a dream. I mean, even those in the gambling industry openly say the machines are there to take your money. One might win now and again, and it is a belief that will happen again and again that feeds the addiction. So if we take into account the ripple effect of each gambling individual problem gambler having a direct impact on at least 5 people, we're looking at close to 250,000 people adversely affected by Māori problem gambling. The Māori Party has consistently described the harm associated with gambling in terms that Dr. Lorna Dial has described as a social hazard. So Dr. Dial compared the intervention of games such as Risk or Powerball as on par with the introduction of any biological or chemical hazards that are likely to place people at risk, in danger of loss or injury. She describes these games of chance as social hazards which require the same extent of licensing, management, monitoring and ongoing research to assess the full social, economic and cultural impacts. So we've made, as a Māori Party, we've made changes on the work on tobacco, with regards to the work on the tobacco reform. We're looking at the alcohol overuse, particularly amongst Māori communities, and tonight we want to focus on gambling harm. So this bill proposes to do so in 5 ways. Firstly, this bill responds to the public sentiment and evidence that there are already too many pokies and venues in some locations and districts by adding public sentiment and evidence of harm to the major criteria to be applied in developing a territorial authorities gambling venue policy. It empowers local authorities, after consulting the community and affected operators, to eliminate or reduce the number of pokie machines in venues in particular suburbs or towns where public sentiment or evidence of harm justifies this. Second, sir, it cuts out racing and racing stake money as an authorised charitable purpose. That is inconsistent with the community benefit tenor of the rest of the Principal Act. Special consideration to this industry alone should not continue when the community and Māori and iwi organisations are so desperately short of funding. Third, it requires the distribution of proceeds to be carried out primarily for the benefit of community, sporting and social service organisations operating within and for the benefit of the geographic community in which the venue is located. It specifically requires all pokie machine trusts, corporate societies and other distributors of the proceeds of gambling machines to return at least 80% of these funds generated by gamblers' losses on local pokie machines back into the charitable organisations that are meeting their priority needs in the same local community area, local authority area as the venue, and within the same local authority ward, local board subdivision or community board area where such subdivisions exist. Fourthly, this bill also phases out the pokie trusts or corporate societies as the distributors of community benefit money from pokie machines, and so within a year's time passes over responsibility for those distributions to special committees of local authorities with a majority of representation from community organisations, sort of modelled on the Creative New Zealand Creative Communities Fund committees and the former Hillary Commission local committees. I might say that this section has been a major discussion point in sub-submissions to me from some trusts who believe that they are doing things by the book, if you like, but even they admit that not everything is as it should be, and so I look forward to the ideas from the industry. Fifthly, sir, gamblers who are having problems with their behaviour when using pokie machines frequently have their problems exacerbated by losing track of the amounts of losses or of the passage of time. Gamblers could more often be able to manage their gambling if pokie machine venue operators were obliged to keep track of each gambler's overall losses and time spent gambling through using common technological devices like player tracking systems. If in addition gamblers were equipped with pre-commit cards in which gamblers preset away from the gambling venue limits on the amounts of losses and time spent gambling on pokie machines, then they could restore control over their own behaviour and greatly reduce the problems they could face from pokie gambling. Sir, this bill proposes making such player tracking devices and pre-commit cards a required condition of a poker machine venue operator's licence as issued by the Secretary of Internal Affairs. Finally, sir, there's no dispute over the fact that gambling is extremely destructive to individuals, whānau and communities in the way in which they impact on the quality of life for whānau and inhibits their capacity...
I'm sorry to interrupt the honourable member. His time has expired. I call Michael Woodhouse.